Welcome to Accelerate with Nerdio. In today's video, we'll be discussing Sysprep and its best practices when it comes to managing golden images and templates within a Nerdio environment, and how it gets used when you commit those templates and are looking to add additional hosts or rebuild personal desktops, things of that nature. Please remember to check the video details for additional links and updates, and also please visit help.nerdio.net for all of our articles and videos. Let's review our agenda. First, we'll be talking about the prerequisites in order for you to learn more about Sysprep, and then we'll follow that up with the video from our October 2020 webinar. Let's discuss the needed prerequisites. First, you'll need a WVD personal desktop or host pool. Second, you'll need a domain admin account. And if you need assistance with creating a domain admin account, please go to help.nerdio.net. And in the search bar there, type in Accelerate, creating a domain admin. And then lastly, you'll need access to the template or golden image if you're going to make any of those changes. Otherwise, everything else will be conducted within the Nerdio admin portal. And so now we'll go ahead and join content taken from our Everything Azure for MSPs October 2020 webinar with Christopher Jones.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin, and hello, everybody. Like he said, my name is Christopher, and I am the Director of Distribution Technical Solutions here at Nerdio. So following along in the spirit of Halloween, I will be covering a topic that has probably been the bane of existence for some of you. That's right, I'm talking about the Sysprep monster. And if you're new to Nerdio and Microsoft Imaging, don't worry, you will soon have to face this foul beast. So my goal with this segment of the webinar is to equip you with the best weapons and show you the key weaknesses to exploit when fighting with Sysprep, and I'm going to do this by providing some background on where the Sysprep monster spawned and to whom it owes its allegiance. I'll then explain how Nerdio attempts to harness this monster to serve our purposes. I'll cover the top Sysprep aggravators to avoid when using Sysprep yourself, and I'll conclude by sharing a few recommendations we have built from our countless encounters facing this foul beast. Alright, so when covering the topic of what Sysprep is and who owns it, it's important for us to start at the beginning. And we're talking way back in the first age of the IT space, back before the year 2000. Alright, and for those of you ancient ones among us, as old as time itself, who were already experienced IT warriors in the year 1996, you'll remember the birth of Sysprep. So Microsoft first introduced Sysprep with Windows NT 4.0, and then evolved it for the subsequent release of each Windows version. So from 2000 and XP all the way to today's Windows 10. And it was initially created to serve as an ally to those in the IT space facing the challenge of standardizing deployments of medium to large scale environments. So as you know, standardized desktop deployments have traditionally been performed using the disk cloning utility. And Microsoft needed something to prepare the operating system and template image for the cloning process. And it did this by developing Sysprep, which basically removes any PC specific information from a Windows installation, and what that does is, in effect, it generalizes the installation, and the resulting benefit is that the Sysprep image can then be installed on different PCs without running into PC-specific conflicts. So as you can see, Sysprep is pretty much Microsoft born and bred. So now let's get into the details and talk about exactly what Sysprep does on the template disk to prepare it for the cloning process. So first off, Sysprep removes any PC-specific information for the Windows installation. This includes the PC's security identifier, also known as the SID or SID. And the benefit of this is that it allows you to take the image and apply it to other PCs. Kind of like we've been talking about, this is known as generalizing the PC or the image. Sysprep also uninstalls any PC-specific drivers from the Windows image. So what this means is that the image can then be applied to just about any PC without running into compatibility issues after the installation. Sysprep then prepares the drive for delivery to the customer or destination PC, or in our case, it would be the destination virtual machine, by setting the PC to boot in UBI or out-of-box experience. And the final thing that Sysprep does is allows the addition of answer file settings to be configured on the Sysprepped image. And the benefit of this is that it allows you to modify the Windows settings on your image during setup. And with this, you can also create settings to trigger scripts that run after specific events occur. Now, before we transition to how Nerdio uses Sysprep, it's important to take a moment and remind everyone of one of the key and fundamental principles behind the design of Azure in the WVD space. And that principle is the idea of dynamic sizing in the pay-as-you-go model, which basically says that you only pay for those resources which are being used in your environment. And to help people leverage this to its fullest, Microsoft developed technology such as autoscaling, which allows you to add and remove resources in an environment based on the user's workload at that time. And this is a pretty stark contrast to on-prem thinking, since in standard environments you would need more resources. In the event that you need more resources, you have to order physical hardware, you then go install it, and then you're stuck with that until you make another physical change. Well, looking back at the Azure space, most people love the flexibility that comes with dynamic sizing of an environment. However, it raises a challenge which might be insurmountable without a creature like Sysprep on your side. Think about all the man hours that would go into physically monitoring an environment and then manually preparing a new virtual machine every time a session host was required to run a user session. The reality is that this would just be impractical, and Sysprep is an absolute requirement to even consider this type of environment management. All right, so now that we've been over some of the history and background regarding Sysprep and how it's used, let's now discuss how Nerdio has harnessed this beast for our purposes. So Nerdio employs the power of Sysprep on the two reference images in our environment. And those images are the golden image, as you can see on the left here, and then any pool templates indicated on the right. And as I'm sure you know, the golden image can be used as an optional one-time reference for any new pool templates. And then it is also the standard for every new dedicated desktop. The pool templates are used as the standard for all hosts in a given pool, and anytime a change is required on the golden image or the pool template, that machine is powered on, the change is made, and then that virtual machine is sysprepped to generalize it and make sure it is a viable reference for any new resources created based on that image. And the benefit of this is that when administering an environment, you can now make a single change on the reference image and see that change replicated to all new resources provisioned off that reference image. And what this does is it basically just streamlines the management piece, and it allows for automation such as autoscale to come into play, which will reference the template anytime a new host is required. And since the template has been fully configured and then sysprepped, there is no human involvement required when the new host is getting built. And what this automation does is it allows the new host to point to the sysprepped template as its reference and then get created as a perfect copy of that image. And this is incredibly effective, especially for large-scale environments with hundreds or thousands of hosts getting created and destroyed at a daily rate based on the user's workloads. So with this understanding, you can see how Sysprep can be a great ally when managing environments with any type of automation and imaging requirement, which, that pretty much applies to every Nerdio environment. So now that we've seen how great an ally the Sysprep monster can be, let's now talk about those things that you can do to turn Sysprep against you. And believe me, Sysprep can be quite unforgiving, and sagas have been written of the great battles that other IT warriors like yourself have endured after aggravating this foul beast. So, the first aggravator on my list here has to do with Microsoft Store apps. And to explain this better, I'll give you a scenario. So, let's say you are working on a WVD pool template. You know that users will require the mail, calendar, and travel app from the Microsoft Store. So what do? You go to the Microsoft Store and then install or update those apps. And you then finish your changes and power off the pool template and set it as image using the Nerdio admin portal. And when you push that button, the pool template sets as image, but what it does through the app is it subsequently runs sysprep on that image and it generalizes it. However, in this scenario, the sysprep task fails with either a standard error or one about the preparation tool 3.14 stating a fatal error occurred while trying to sysprep the machine. And the reason this happened is because you actually need to install or make changes using the all users package. And the benefit of this all users package is that the app will be installed on the image so that, kind of as the title alludes to, all users who use the image can access the app and receive those changes you made on the template. Without this, those changes are just going to be specific to a given user and would then prevent Sysprep from generalizing the image, as in this scenario with the error that was experienced. And as a reminder, this is not something unique to Nerdio, and kind of given the nature of the way our Nerdio tool is positioned, we frequently have partners point the finger at us when they encounter a Sysprep error. And, to be honest, this is pretty understandable since we are the first layer partner C when administering their environment. However, kind of as you've seen and experienced from this presentation so far, you can kind of see Nerdio is simply leveraging the Microsoft native Sysprep tool, but this is not something we developed or something unique just to us. And what I just shared regarding the installation of the store apps and using the all user package is actually something that is just best practice in any Windows environment when utilizing Sysprep. And Microsoft has a great article on this. They actually just published this last Thursday, which goes over the exact PowerShell you can run to make sure your changes are made for all users. So if you're interested in this, or maybe you've ran into this in an existing environment, or maybe foresee yourself making a similar change, I would recommend Googling that title down there at the bottom, just the Sysprep fails after you remove or update Microsoft Store apps. The full title there, that's the title of the article I was referencing. Obviously, you don't have to read out or write out rather the entire title. As long as you reference something about Sysprep and Microsoft App Store, you should be pretty close. And the PowerShell there can be found at the very bottom of the article. This next one is pretty simple and straightforward. However, you'd be surprised how often it comes up. And a scenario for this would be a technician has powered on the template to do some routine maintenance. And as part of that, he or she checks for Windows updates and finds a few that need to be ran. So those updates are kicked off, and the technician then proceeds to complete the other tasks on his or her list and powers the template off. In this case, the error they will receive is going to be pretty generic, just going to be a standard Sysprep error, which basically states that Sysprep failed to complete. And in this scenario, the root issue is that either the updates were still installing in the background when they tried to set the template as image and run Sysprep, or the updates completed, but the template was never restarted to allow those updates to take effect. And if you forget to do either of those, either first, letting the updates finish, or second, processing a restart afterwards, Sysprep is going to fail, and you'll be kind of left scratching your head wondering what you did to throw things out of whack. So to avoid this, it's pretty straightforward. Just kind of make sure that you're intentional to be thorough and cross your T's and dot your I's when performing any type of routine maintenance on the image so that you avoid running into any Sysprep issues. And in the Nerdio context, this would be the two images that you just want to make sure that you're thorough on are the pool templates and then also the golden image if you're making changes there as well. Aggravator number 3 is a situation where the firewall is blocking DNS or communication to the domain controller has been disrupted. And this situation is a bit different and has to do more with the network layer and not necessarily anything specific to the actual machine or VM where Sysprep is running. And a good scenario for this is a situation where a technician has implemented a firewall rule that again is either blocking DNS or that same rule cuts off communication to the domain controller. Now, we definitely understand the need to keep things secure in your client's environment. However, if communication is cut, Sysprep will not run successfully and will throw a standard communication error. And again, these are pretty generic and mention not being able to connect to the virtual machine or something about the WinRM service not running. And it might also mention something about, checking your network, and sometimes gives you a little tidbit about the firewall and saying something might potentially be blocking it there. But the best way to troubleshoot this is to just kind of reverse any network changes that were recently made, and then after that consult with us regarding what the change was and your desired outcome so that we can advise you how to both keep the environment secure and align with best practices for a virtual environment, which is also leveraging Sysprep images. Aggravator number 4 is a situation where the technician has set up a login banner to display when users first log in. And this is normally great, but the only downside in an environment leveraging Sysprep is that this banner also prevents the local admin account from logging in to run the interactive Sysprep process, which subsequently throws an error. So the fix for this is pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Just remove the login banner and you should be good to go. Aggravator number 5 occurs in a situation where a technician was poking around without having a full understanding of the environment and how things are configured. And what they did is delete the Nerdio admin account or reset the password. And this would be either the Nerdio local or the Nerdio domain admin. And the result from this is a situation where the VM isn't able to communicate with the domain controller and Sysprep isn't able to run. So the best fix for this is to simply reach out to Nerdio support and work with us to restore these accounts back to their defaults. So now that we've covered the top aggravators, let's go over some final thoughts and recommendations we have when harnessing the power of Sysprep. And the biggest tip we can give is to still follow the best practices you've always followed in shared session and terminal server and RDS environments, right? So application installs should not be done for a single user, but instead made for all users. Don't install specific applications like VPN applications that bind to the host and local NIC, which if you do this will of course prevent Sysprep from generalizing the image because now you're tying into something local to that machine and that disk rather than something that can be standardized, which is what the Sysprep process tries to accomplish. The last thing there is related to RMM, antivirus, and remote console installs. And I know that a lot of partners leverage these, and so this is an important thing to note, but these natively tie into the PC and will almost always cause Sysprep errors when installed directly on the template. So our recommendation for this is to work with the ISV OEM for startup scripts that can be implemented through something like a group policy and applied to an RDS group, like the RDS computers group. So what this will do is it's going to allow you to still make those installs without creating Sysprep issues on the actual template. And in conjunction with this, dynamic pools do need some garbage collection in the command and control centers to avoid tying up any licenses. So before we conclude today, I want to provide you with a few troubleshooting tips you can employ to help you avoid causing major impact to your environment when you do experience Sysprep issues. So the first tip I have, it actually comes into play before your battle even starts. And this has to do with ensuring you always have a fresh, clean backup before you make any changes on an image. And I can't tell you the number of times partners I've worked with make changes on an image in their environment, those changes go south, and they can't seem to bring things back to a stable state. And in situations like this, Nerdio support will try to help as best we can. However, since this isn't really something native to Nerdio, that being Sysprep, our ability to troubleshoot is kind of limited. And in these cases, if the template is in an irreversible state, the partner is frequently left with no other option than to actually start over with a brand new pool and kind of build it from scratch. And this is, the case, especially if they didn't have backups enabled. So again, just always make sure backups are enabled and healthy before making any significant changes on a Sysprep image. Once you've ensured that you have a good backup, my next tip is to make changes in phases. And I know the process for setting a template as image and running Sysprep can be quite extensive at around 45 minutes to an hour. However, when making lots of changes, it can actually be incredibly beneficial to group your changes. And so here's what I mean by that. Let's say this is a new deployment and you have a group of 9 applications that need to be installed. Installing 3 at a time, setting as image, then powering the template back on, installing the next 3, etc., and repeating that will be hugely beneficial if you do run into an error. And the reason is because you'll know that the root cause is related to one of the 3 most recent applications that were installed. And this can save you a significant amount of time compared to the alternative, which is to install, let's say, all 9 applications and then either have to start from scratch when you run into an issue, or build a brand new pool and try to just troubleshoot uninstalling one application at a time. So it can be a very, very frustrating experience, and believe it or not, I've seen more than my fair share of partners go with the second option. They install everything on one pool, and then when something goes south and they try to set his image, they end up spending hours and hours troubleshooting to try to figure out which application was the root issue. So moving on to my last tip, this one comes into play when administering a live environment. And this recommendation is to build a second pool and test your changes on that isolated pool and template. What you can do is you can build this second pool on a very small Azure VM, so something like, let's say, a D2 SV3 to help you save on the cost. And taking this approach actually allows you to maintain the integrity of the primary pool and image while verifying that the application will install correctly. And using the Nerdio admin portal, you can actually build your second pool as a perfect replica of the first. And the benefit of this is that you get to test with 100% accuracy regarding the compatibility of the new application. So once you finish your tests, if things went south and the application caused serious problems, all you have to do is delete the test pool, knowing everything is fine in the live environment with the primary pool. However, if things go well, you have two options. Option one is to just upgrade the VM size on the test pool to production and then just move the users over to that pool as their primary. And then option two would be to delete the test pool and make those changes on the primary template. Cool, so these are my troubleshooting tips. If you follow these when making changes on your Sysprep image, it will set you up for success in your environment. So hopefully after all this, you've come to the same conclusion that I have, which is that Sysprep is a bit misunderstood. And although it can seem like a huge scary monster, it actually serves a very important function, and when used correctly, can be the key to large-scale infrastructure standardization and management. So thanks everybody for sticking with me.